Hi, 8! It's Mrs. Reed again, and today we're going to be looking back over some of the poems that we have learned so far. Can you please make sure that you're ready before we start, that you have got yourself a pen, some lined paper, and you might also want to make sure that you can access some of the other resources on Show My Homework. There is an editable PowerPoint document that you can use. If you can't get onto that for any reason, I'm going to suggest you make sure you have a pencil and a ruler just to draw yourself out the grid. Okay, let's make a start. So throughout this unit, you have actually studied 8 poems in total. So really well done. Each of these poems have really given us different perspectives on the human experience. And we've talked quite a lot about the point of poetry and how it can help us to understand the world in different ways. So before we finish this unit, I think it's really important that we have a pause point and a reflection again. So we can look back over some of the poems we've learned. We can consider really what we've learned about different cultures. So I'm going to talk you through some of the big ideas that link together 3 poems that we've studied. These poems are Caged Bird, Island Man, and Nothing's Changed. So all of these poems help us to understand what it might be like to live in another country or to be part of another culture. They give us an insight into the experiences of others whose lives are really different from our own. These poems can help us to explore people's feelings and emotions, their decisions that people make, and as well as their need and desire for change. These experiences can be both positive and negative, so they might highlight opportunity, for example, which we see in the poem Island Man, as well as homesickness and the desire to go back to the country or culture that you've grown up in. They might also highlight to us negative experiences, such as social injustice and inequality and the need for reform. 2 big concepts that we've looked at through these poems have been issues of segregation and oppression. When we looked at segregation, we looked at the idea that racial segregation has been enforced in different countries. We've looked at America and South Africa as examples. And we've looked at the great suffering caused, particularly to Black people through this segregation. We discussed then the ideas that social injustice creates inequality. It allows some people to have freedoms and opportunities that others do not. We've also talked about oppression. That's the unjust and unfair way that people are treated, particularly by those in power and systems of government. We've looked at how people who are oppressed can be powerless to change their situation, and the anger and the frustration and the hurt that goes along with that. We've also looked at how poets use techniques such as juxtaposition or symbolism to identify the fact that while some people are oppressed, others have privilege, freedom and choice. So these ideas, particularly of oppression, can lead to suffering, but also of resilience and the desire for change. And poetry can be used as a way to argue for social and political change. So I've included in this PowerPoint examples of the 3 poems for your reference, for you to pause and to read back through and to enjoy again. So before we go on to our activity, I think it's really important you've given yourself a chance to read those poems, okay, to look at them again. But I want to now just put you to the test and check what you remember and what you know of those 3 poems. So here is a short multiple choice quiz. I'd like to know: 1. Which two poems expose the impact of segregation? 2. Which poem helps us to understand how it feels to move from one country to another? 3. Which poem is a powerful protest against apartheid? 4. Which poem juxtaposes images of life in London and the Caribbean to explore the feeling of homesickness? And 5. Which poem uses symbolism to highlight ideas of freedom and oppression? Pause the video and complete the quiz. Okay, let's mark your answers. So you should have had that the poems that expose the impact of segregation were Caged Bird and Nothing's Changed. The poem that helped us to understand how it felt to move from one country to another was Island Man. The poem which is a powerful protest against apartheid was Nothing's Changed. The poem which juxtaposed life in London with the Caribbean was Island Man. And finally, the poem which uses symbolism to highlight ideas of freedom versus those of oppression was Caged Bird. Okay, give yourself a mark out of 5. So our final task for this lesson, and one that's going to take you a little while to complete, is a comparative table. Now, you've completed one of these previously for looking back over the representations of war in 3 war poems. There is in the grid some prompts to help you, but the idea is for you to fill out the grid with as much information as you can about the 3 poems. As I said before, there is a PowerPoint version of this template on Show My Homework. So if you wish to complete a digital copy and then send that over to your teacher, that is fine. However, if you wish to do this by hand, you'll need to draw out the table before you fill it in. Let's have a look at the table. Okay, so you can see here the table which asks you to do several things. The first one is to compare the 3 poems. So I want for each one, in your own words, a brief summary of the poem. So you can tell me there, like the narrative, what is it about? And then on from that, what is the message of the poem? What are the big ideas that the poet might present? If you look to the bottom boxes, you can see that there are a range of things for you to note down. You might want to include some textual evidence from the poems to support your answers. So one of the big ideas in these poems is that poetry can be used as a medium, really, a vehicle to argue for social and political change. So I want you to make some notes on that, including those terms oppression and segregation. So you might want to note down which poems explore this and what ideas are presented. We know that these poems help us to understand the experience of different cultures and countries. So you may want to make some notes there about what ideas it's helped you to understand and which ones do you think are most powerful. There's a box for you to make a link between at least 2 of the poems. You might link them not just in their big ideas, but perhaps the feelings that are explored or the techniques that the poems use. And finally, I'd like to know which one you have enjoyed studying, which one you found to be most effective and why. So, looking at the time now, I would say that this task is going to take you a minimum of about 20 to 25 minutes. And you want to either complete it on the PowerPoint or draw out the grid for yourself. Once you've completed that work, please send some evidence over to your teachers And as I've said, each day this week, a really, really big well done to you. You're working incredibly hard, and we are very impressed with your knowledge of poetry. Good job, guys. Bye.